Okay. Does anybody have any shalom moments from the past week you'd like to share?
I don't know. I just find that this time of the year, everyone is just so friendly and giving towards each other. You know, it's like when I was in Kohl's yesterday, I passed my coupon on to the lady behind me, and we walked out being like not friends, but acquaintances, just holding a conversation.
Mhm.
And I find that only happens around this time of the year,
Mhm.
which is sad. And then I met another lady in Bostov's at the handbag counter, and she was waiting to look at a Dooney and Burke, and I had left. And then lo and behold, I met her again in Sam's. And I says to her, I'm going to Wegmans next.
Mary, the stories you share here often have to do with shopping. I've
Yeah,
noticed.
What can I tell you? Somebody's got to get this economy up and running.
Yeah.
And if the shelves are empty, it's because of me.
It's because of you. There's no supply chain issue. It's just Mary's buying
It's
everything.
in Mary's house.
It's all Mary's house.
And that shopping's
You
an
know, but
opportunity.
you know, to me, shopping is social. It's a social event.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Anybody else have a shalom moment to share?
I was thinking about when we were at council on Monday night, and we're going to be sending out a letter that Pastor has drafted to the congregation, just talking about the 50th and how we've still been a congregation and new ministries and everything else. And it was just really a good conversation. I think of everyone's kind of point of view from different things of what they saw or what they've been feeling during these, 18 months, almost 2 years. So that for me was good.
I don't know if this is exactly a shalom moment, but it was nice. We did this Advent workshop on Sunday, and we really haven't done any activities at the church because of COVID. So I had approached the pastor a few weeks ago and asked if it was okay if we did something, and we kind of spread out a little bit, but it was nice just getting people together to be able to do something inside the church as a church activity when we haven't been able to do much of that for a long time. So that was nice. And I think the people that were there enjoyed making crafts and fixing Christmas, and it was good.
This isn't a shalom moment, but I obtained this Joy to the World daily readings for Advent at a craft fair. And there was something in there I read yesterday that I never really thought of it in the way it's written. This man lost his wife, and someone asked him how he was doing, and he said, Jesus has been a true friend.
Mm.
And it just made me start, it started me thinking about how, he was grieving and he went through his wife's illness, and Jesus was always there with him, and he was a friend to him. I guess,
A nice image. Yeah.
I thought so. I didn't want to make everybody sad.
Anything else?
I was just out to take some soup out to Vivian, and she's so thankful that people are coming in and bringing her things and helping her out. She did tell me she's 88, and she said, she was always very well put together and took care of herself, and now she can't. She just can't. She just, I think she stays in her chair all night. I'm not sure if she gets up and goes to bed, but she's so thankful that people are stopping in, and she's so happy to see them. But she still is pretty sick, I think. Well, she's not sick, but she can't get her strength back,
Mm.
which is hard for her.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing those. We are still in chapter 4, because chapter 4 is a bumper length chapter, and we didn't finish it last week, so we will finish that today. Let's pray. God, we thank you for being with us this past week in so many ways. We thank you for being a friend to us. We thank you for inspiring us and going with us as we do things we haven't done through the pandemic before, as we gather together a little bit more, as we share with one another the gifts you've given us. Pray that as we continue to study your word today, that you would bless us with faith and understanding. Pray all this through Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. So we are starting at the top of page 14. And the order of people I see on my screen is Brenda, Georgia, Kim, Mary, Janet, Joe, and Karen. So Brenda, would you like to read the first paragraph and also what's in those little boxes there?
Okay. Would the partner people remain faithful to the covenant life? Would they continue to live the Manna way? If they were to remain faithful, Yahweh knew that they would have to hold two qualities to balance. Righteousness. Following the words of the covenant gift, the Holy Torah, which describes the manna life, the just way to live together. Mercy. Practicing compassion towards the most vulnerable in society, the widows, orphans, and sojourners.
Okay, thank you. And remember, what we're looking at in this chapter is preparing the Israelites for what life will be like once they reach the land, once they're no longer traveling through the wilderness. So these are the two things to hold in balance. What do you make of this definition of righteousness? Does this surprise you? Is this different than you would have thought of righteousness, or is it pretty much on track with how you understood it?
It's the way I understood it.
Okay.
Just way to live together.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Years ago, I used to think of righteousness, before I was really going to church much, as being self-righteous, like the church lady
Yeah.
image on TV, where you're just, everyone is wrong and you're right. And that really turned me off. But then when I grew to know what righteousness means, it really is following God's word, whether or not people like it or not. You just don't lord it over people. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one difference between righteousness and self-righteousness is kind of ironic, given the words that righteousness is about how I act and self-righteousness is about how I think you should act. And I see here that even though it's about community, it's not about people telling one another how to be. It's about being. I can't stand self-righteousness in anybody, even people I agree with. If they're self-righteous about it, I don't want to be around them. I find it really annoying. So looking at these words here, looking on the left, can you think of anybody who fits this definition of righteous? It could be somebody you know, it could be somebody that you don't know, someone you're aware of, but who can you think of anyone who is righteous according to this?
This is terrible. Nobody could come up with anyone.
It is terrible. That
Jesus,
is terrible.
That's what I was gonna say, Jesus.
Okay.
yeah.
Jesus is probably the only one who's ever been perfect at it, but maybe if can you think of someone who approaches it then? Who
My cousin
okay.
Ann.
how so? How do you see her as righteous?
Well, it's hard to explain, but you know, sometimes I'll call her with to vent, and she helps me to see things in a different way. And I don't know, it's just hard to explain, Pastor. She reads her Bible, she can quote from the Bible, and I don't know, I just can't explain it.
My friend, she lost her husband. She is living still in her home, and she goes to work every day, and she is not treated very well at work, but she does her job, and she always tries to say something nice to the people, to the ones that are
Not nice to her.
always giving her a problem.
Mm. Do you think she's being bullied?
Pardon me?
Do you think she's being bullied at work?
Well, it doesn't matter. She just tries to be nice to those folks
Terrible. That's
and
terrible.
always talk to them and things like that. So I think she's my idea of righteous.
Definitely.
I told several years ago, I told Vivian that she was my role model because she is so giving and so peaceful.
Mhm.
And besides, she really keeps herself looking so neat and great and, you know, looks wonderful, you know, no matter how old she is, you know, she is always, you know, pleasure to behold. Anyway, so that's a person that I would call righteous.
I think that Mother Teresa was probably righteous. I mean, there's the way she lived and gave her life, you know, for others who were just that no one else would, you know, the outcasts, and no one else would even dare to be around. She made it her life's work.
If we're going back that far, how about Oscar Schindler?
Sure.
Oh, gosh.
He was certainly righteous in helping to save so many Jewish people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So many people. Gandhi, civil rights people who have been marching and working for civil rights. And
One pattern I see among the people you've been describing is a level of selflessness.
Selfless.
That these are people, you know, both the you know, the well-known people as well as the, you know, the individuals you described, I think are people who did what they did even when it wasn't in their best interest, at least in the short term.
Mhm.
Journalists.
And a danger to them in some
Yeah, absolutely.
ways.
Yeah.
Journalists and reporters who go into these war-torn countries.
Sure.
Right.
On the news last night, World News Tonight, I always watch. And there's a British journalist who has gone into Syria, and now he's in Afghanistan and reporting on how they're suffering now. You know, to go into war-torn lands and report back what's going on. That's definitely selfless.
Sure. Yep. There's easier ways to make a buck than that.
Definitely. I just watched a movie about a female. Her name was Marie something. I forget. who was a reporter. She was eventually killed, but she was going into these war-torn. It's a good movie if you can stand it.
And I think in some places, journalists just writing the truth, even if they're not, going to a
Absolutely.
war-torn area,
Mhm.
depending on how the government is. And in Russia right now, it's not necessarily safe to write anything critical about
No,
Vladimir Putin. People have
True.
disappeared, so I think that takes courage too.
Or China.
Right? Yeah, absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. So how about the other side of this, mercy? Can you think of anyone who fits this definition of mercy? And maybe it's the same people, maybe it's different ones.
Mhm.
I think everybody tries to do what they can to practice compassion, and especially at Christmas time. But
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people do. I don't know that I agree that everybody does. I
no,
think there are
No.
some nasty people out there too, but
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think we see more of it around Christmas time. Yeah.
It'd be Christmas every day.
I think a lot of the things we did throughout the year at Prince of Peace, like socks, and I think they took some food maybe down to one of the homeless shelters and
Yep.
that kind of stuff. So I think Prince of Peace has done, something like that throughout the entire year.
I think we're very compassionate at our church, and we
Yeah.
think of the less fortunate.
Hmm.
I think so too.
Feel like sometimes there's different levels of mercy. Like I think take the cards for the kids for Christmas presents. I think everybody or most people love to do that because you want to show mercy and compassion to children. I think sometimes it's harder to show mercy to people that you may feel like don't deserve it or don't want it as much. So, it's hard to show mercy to someone that's done something against you, or, it's hard to show mercy to someone that did something that you don't agree with. And so I think there's different levels of showing mercy. Some ways I think are easier to do than others. Some you really have to try hard to be showing mercy to some people.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And to be truly merciful, I think you can't judge the person because, for example, if I've experienced this, someone I took to a homeless shelter saw a woman with her child who she was carrying, who was a little older, is too old to carry. And they were disheveled. They came in for lunch into the homeless shelter. And the woman I was with said, "Oh, that's disgusting. What, doesn't she bathe her child? And why isn't her child in school?" Well, this is she was not able to show compassion because she was judging, and that got in the way of being compassionate. And I think that's what happens sometimes when you judge. It puts a shield there. It puts a line, and you can't feel that mercy when you're judging someone.
Hmm.
Sometimes the self-righteousness comes back into play when you're
That's
judging.
exactly it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's why I see now why they link it.
Yeah.
Why the author linked those two, mercy and righteousness, that you can't really, do the mercy without the righteousness and vice versa.
Well, let's read about that then.
Oh, I didn't read ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. You're actually
I didn't get to read.
you did a good job of guessing what's coming next though. So
Okay.
I think George is next. Can you read?
Yahweh understood that righteousness without mercy leads to grumpy legalism. On the other hand, mercy without righteousness leads to wishy-washy sentimentalism. The lover God wondered, how can the people be helped to hold the two in balance? How can they be deepened, enriched, and renewed in the life of righteousness and mercy? After thinking and thinking, Yahweh decided to give the beloved people one more gift.
You can keep going.
The gift of worship, the joyful activity when the partner people will confess God's holy name and will ascribe absolute worth to God and to God alone. Hear, O Israel, Yahweh your God is one God, and you shall love Yahweh your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength.
Okay. If you remember from past sessions, the author here has been using different descriptors of God, that God is, the creator, the teacher, so forth. And here he adds another one in the third line here, the lover God. He describes God as lover. So what do you make of this? How is worship a gift that helps keep the balance between righteousness and mercy?
It's a reminder. Every week, it's a reminder.
How do we get reminded of that?
I get reminded by going to church every Sunday.
By your sermons.
Okay, so that's part of it, is in the proclamation of the word. Okay.
I think about in our prayers, I mean, we ask God for mercy all the time. So is by asking, in that relationship with God, when we come to worship him, you feel, when you're asking for mercy, I think that's the relationship building between you and God, that you will come no matter what.
Good. Where do you see expressions of mercy or love in worship?
When the intercessory prayers are said.
Okay. The word mercy is often there even. Sometimes the response is, have mercy on us, or something like that. Yeah.
Through communion.
Okay.
Confession is part of the communion, but I think when we have confessed, we are asking for God's mercy.
And I think that ties righteousness in as well, doesn't it? Because what we confess is our failure to have been righteous. Yeah.
In communion, we're reminded of the gift of the theme of this course, because we're given manna in communion, if we stop and think about it. And I don't think about that story every time I get communion, but it might be a good idea to think about it, to remind us that we live by this gift of God, and that generations before us have lived by this gift, and generations after us will live by this gift.
Yeah. Sure. Okay, let's read the top of page 15.
Worship will also be a special time to remember, retell, and give thanks for Yahweh's saving acts in history, The times when the lover God practiced righteousness and mercy in awesome ways, especially in the great liberation from Pharaoh's Egypt, Deuteronomy 26, 1 through 11. You liberated us from Egypt. We give you thanks, O Yahweh, God of Israel. Amen.
Okay. And
You
Mary,
want
can you
me
read
to
the next?
continue or
Oh,
stop
we'll
there?
let Mary go on to the next paragraph.
Okay.
By worshiping the people will incorporate themselves into the life of God. By confessing the Hear, O Israel, by telling the stories of God, by sharing the meal to remember the great Exodus, and by offering thanksgiving, the people will immerse themselves more deeply into the life of God, into partnership with God. This relationship will empower the community to act as Yahweh acts in righteousness and mercy.
Okay. I'm going to turn to the back of the book and read one of the end notes here. If you want to read along, it's on page 81, where it says, page 15, it says, the meal, Passover or Seder, to remember the Exodus is celebrated among Jewish people to this day. Its observance is commanded. In Hebrew thought, remember means more than calling to mind. Remembering is linked to God's promise. It brings God's actions of the past into the present, and it enables God's future to enter the present reality. We use the word remember in worship as well, especially around communion, which is the meal we share. Do you think it does that for us? Does communion, connect us with, with the past and the future?
Yes, I have the image of Jesus sitting at the table with his disciples and also with me and with us as a congregation, breaking the bread and, providing the wine. I feel that I'm there, it's history and it's the past, but it's also the present. And I know that it'll continue, so I can see it. I like that whole idea of the Jewish people being so tied into history. I think they are more so than we are. I haven't really dug into Judaism, but it seems that they are very tied into their history.
I think you're right. My understanding of Judaism, I think you're right. The way you describe that reminds me of an image that's in the First Communion curriculum that I use here. There's a couple leaflets I hand out to the kids, and in one of them, when you open the page up, there's this drawing of a big table that goes across both pages, and Jesus is at the center of the table. And then on one side of the page, the people around it are all dressed in robes and you kind of, dressed in quote, Bible clothing. And on the other side of the table, it's people dressed in contemporary clothes. And one thing we talk about there is that it's all one table. We're, Holy Communion connects us to these, to the people who received the Last Supper in the beginning, as well as everyone since, which I think is it's similar to what I heard you saying, Karen.
And we could extend the table and have people dressed in futuristic type clothing.
I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking of different ages and the different costumes. I love that when I watch television and movies and I see the period piece, where the different kinds of clothing people wore in that time, and then you see the future. So that's connects us in many ways.
And I think people are dressing even differently today. Not to judge, but I was just uptown sitting in the car. And a man walked down the street with his shorts on and his red Crocs. I mean, it's December. People
But it's
do
close to
not-
50, Janet.
It is
It's
warm
warm
today.
It's warm today, Janet.
People dress differently. They don't dress according to the season anymore. I
Go
see
stand at the bus stop one day and
I
see how
know,
many
I see
kids have
kids
shorts on.
with
I hear
shorts
you.
and no. So we are dressing different
Yes,
even
we are.
today.
Sure.
Mhm.
Our mothers would be shocked at the things we're wearing, our grandmothers.
Yes, we would.
I mean, if my mother saw me in leggings,
Right.
even if I had a tunic over it, she would be very shocked.
But you'd be welcome at the communion table, no matter how you dress.
That's true.
Yep.
Mhm.
That's true.
Even if we're not welcome everywhere we go in in the outside world, we're all welcome at the communion table. So what, part of this, what this is describing here is how, the act of worship makes a difference in the people's lives. And how would you say worship affects your day-to-day life? How does the experience of worship connect with the rest of your week?
Sometimes there's a calming.
Hmm.
Sometimes the tensions and that happen go on during the week. You go to church, listen to the music and all the words and your sermon and have Holy Communion, and I can leave there with a calming.
Okay. I've heard
Worship
some people
reminds me
say,
I'm not the center of the universe.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What did you say, Pastor?
I was going to say that some people have told me that they don't feel like their week starts right if they don't
Oh,
come to worship. And that was hard for a lot of people this past year, especially when we were totally locked down, when the only worship was online. That was hard for some people. How else does worship connect to your week or to your life in other ways?
That what I hear and what we're talking about remembering, when we take the sacraments, that, when we leave there, we're to be the hands and the feet of Jesus. And how do we act into the community? And, what are the things that we do and opportunities that are presented to us during the week? Would we, if we didn't have this feeling, would there be times that we might be more judgmental and we might not be looking to give somebody mercy? But I think when we gather all of that, and it just I think it starts to become how you think.
I need a constant reminder though, because I was very rude to the customer relations person this morning from the morning hall, because it was I don't know how many times that I haven't gotten the paper.
Yeah.
I said, it's not your fault, but I'm really fed up. But that reminds me that these people have customer relations jobs really at a tough time of it,
Mhm.
because they get the flack all the time.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, you got to have tough skin for a job like that, I guess.
Yes.
I guess going to worship every week just reaffirms how we should be acting
Mhm.
in our daily lives. Love one another as the Lord loves us, and be compassionate and merciful. And yeah, I guess we need that every week, that reminder. But Karen, sometimes you need to vent, and you don't mean to take it out on that person, but that's the person you get on the phone.
Yes, I know.
I mean, I've been there and I've done that. And I've been on the receiving end too,
I'm sure.
working in a bank. So,
Oh, that's right.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like worship definitely provides like a sense of community, and even though I know that God hears my prayers as a single person, I can't help but feel like when you're at worship and everybody's praying together and everybody's singing together, that somehow it's more meaningful than just me. Like if I'm praying at home or praying while I'm taking a walk, or like I just feel like being at church, where everything that's being done at church is a way to lift our prayers to God and celebrate God's love, that it just, to me, even though I know I can pray other places and God hears me, I feel like it's just more meaningful when it's done through worship, because
Mhm,
it's like a multiplier. Everybody's together, doing it together, and it
Mhm.
makes it more than just an individual thing.
mhm.
And I think there's time for individual
Mhm.
stuff too, but worship with other people is more meaningful to me.
Mhm. Yeah, I like worshiping community. It doesn't have to be inside of a church. I've been to Bear Creek Camp, and we, worship outside
Mhm.
at that beautiful spot that they have, or around the campfire, but it's community.
And I think that also, is a very important reminder to us that that's how God wants us to be. We're not made to be isolated individuals. We're made to be in communities. And I always, always get sad when someone, kind of defensively tells me I don't need to go to church to be a good Christian. And I think, well, you do need to be in community to be a good, I don't know what a good Christian is, but to be, a faithful Christian, you do need to have a community of some sort, a community of faith. It doesn't need to be an organized congregation. It doesn't need to take place in a building, but you and Jesus isn't the entirety of it. It's your community is a big part of it.
Thank God for Zoom.
It's having a faith family.
This is a
Like,
community
stay
right
home
here.
and
Yeah,
pray.
Yes, that's what I
absolutely.
was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't. I mean, for some of us don't like Zoom communities. Some of us do, but this is a community. I mean, we are together in some way. Absolutely.
It's like visiting my family every week. I look forward to it,
Mhm.
going to church.
No,
Oops, precious.
just a minute.
I'm glad it's precious and not ginger.
Is it my turn to read?
Yeah, go ahead. You can read the. Yeah, well, but we
My
can skip
doggy's
you.
barking. My doggy's barking. He wants to go out.
All right, let's skip you. We'll come back to you for the next one.
Okay, come
Yeah,
back
let Precious out,
I
Janet.
guess that's me then.
Yeah, go ahead, Dad, and read in the box.
The worship of the partner people also included the offering of sacrifices, the best animals in the herd of a flock and the first fruits. The sacrifices took place at a tent, the tabernacle, during the wilderness days, at holy places, Gilgal, Shiloh, Shechem, during the early days as a nation, and later at the temple in Jerusalem. Sacrifice was not only a powerful reminder that all things belong to God, it also served as a way of restoring the divine human relationship. Through the years, worship came to include many other forms: national thanksgiving, national lament, sorrow for sin, coronation of kings, harvest festivals, and celebrations of creation and the Creator.
Okay, so besides weekly worship services, what are some other moments or gatherings today where God is acknowledged and celebrated or thanked?
Funerals.
Funerals, sure.
Weddings.
Weddings, some anyway.
Baptism.
Baptisms.
Baptism.
Mhm, mhm.
First Holy Communion, confirmation.
These are all kind of special services of the church. Are there any examples outside the church where this happens?
Getting
Bible
less.
studies.
less.
What's that, Georgia?
I was saying outside, I mean, it used to be very common if you went to, a meeting, like I was in life insurance and the life insurance industry, we always opened with a prayer. And
Okay.
prayer is not in meetings that much anymore. I mean, it's really lost its space, which I think is sad, but
Yeah, once upon a time, they used to have prayer or a moment of silence, at least in schools, and they cut that out a long time ago. In fact, you're not even, as a teacher, you're not even allowed to tell kids they have to say the Pledge of Allegiance. You're not even like, I told a girl she had to stand during the Pledge of Allegiance, and she told me she didn't have to. And I went to the principal and I said, what's the deal? And they looked it up, and you can't tell a kid they have to be stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I knew you couldn't tell them they had to say it. So prayer long since went out of schools, unfortunately.
I think there's a misunderstanding generally that the difference between spirituality and religion, because, to be freedom of, you want everyone to be able to worship in their own way. And people, just cut it all out because they think that, we're trying to drive Christianity down their throats, And I think if people would only see the spiritual part of everyone and the freedom to, and have the silence, the moment of silence is so important. I'm surprised they got rid of that. I thought that was still done.
It is still done in my kids' schools.
Mhm.
What exactly do? They just say the kids be quiet for a minute, or how's that work? Do you know?
I think so. I mean, that's what it was when I was in school too. There was no prayer in school when I was in school, but there was a moment of silence followed by the pledge. And it was just kind of announcing, now everybody stand for a moment of silence. I think that's the way it's still done.
And there's a big thing, there's a big trend of mindfulness and meditation for children before they start the school day in some schools, because that's not, religion, quote. So they can have a moment of silence with that. But I think it's probably they're trying to do away with people just trying to not be, as I said, specific about one religion.
And there are certainly, school groups. I mean, one place I see this happening is something called, gather around the flagpole or whatever it's called. There are groups of students, and schools, don't stop students from doing this, who get together at the beginning of the day and do their own prayer, around, they usually do it around the flagpole. And I don't think there's any particular meaning to that, except that it's an easy spot to gather. And the kids kind of have their own prayer together. I think that's a positive thing. Another place I see this is Memorial Day. There's often a lot of municipal gatherings that usually invoke God, and they're not connected to any particular congregation, but usually there's a real element of looking for God's mercy on those.
Well, I
When the
was surprised.
Dolans go out to lunch, we always say prayer.
Social groups. I was surprised when the Elks group was at Tony DeVito's. I had never been exposed to that before. And then the following Sunday, the Elks in Bangor had a memorial service for all of their members who had passed during the year. And I went to that because my nephew had passed away the previous year. And they pray, they light candles and extinguish them one by one. And it was kind of a moving service. But it's a national thing. The Elks do it the first Sunday of December all across the nation. That's Memorial Day for them, to remember their members. But it was a regular ceremony. in their,
Yeah, a lot of those fraternal groups have, it may not be, in line with any one particular denomination, but they have a very spiritual, kind of God-centered ritual to them. I know the Masons also, it's, very spiritual. They invoke the name of God in a lot of ways. Yeah, I was surprised at the elk ceremony too. I thought when Betty told me the Elks were going to do something, I thought it was just going to be a really brief, 2-minute thing. And then by the end of their thing, I thought, well, why did I prepare a funeral? That was a full funeral
It was a
right
full-
there.
Yeah.
It was
And it was
really,
fine. It was good.
I enjoyed that very much.
Mhm.
And they did a good job with it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another time there's prayers is when someone's missing or
Mm,
there's like some bad thing that happened, like a school
Oh.
shooting or that kind of where but especially if somebody's missing or something's wrong, and they get a group of people together. Sometimes it's with candles
yes.
and that doesn't happen usually sometimes that happens in a church, but a lot of times it happens out in the community somewhere.
Mhm. Mhm.
that reminds me too of the phenomenon of people setting up little shrines where accidents happen.
Yeah.
I think, I'm not sure if that's necessarily the healthiest way to go about it, but I think I think what kind of inspires that is the same, kind of the same urge that we have tombstones, that it's something
Right.
to remember that person. And quite often those shrines have crosses or some other sign of God's presence,
And the labyrinth, when you walk the labyrinth, you take a token sometimes of remembrance of
Mhm,
someone.
mhm.
And you put it in the middle when you get to the center, and then you leave it there. Also, when Liz, your mom, Kim, and I went on the Camino, on the way, she took a token, a reminder of your sister to leave there on our walk. And that was her mission, to go. And a lot of people go on these missions to leave to do a worship at that, leaving the token there.
Okay. Well, we're at the end of this chapter, and instead of moving on to the next chapter, I wanted to do some kind of extra stuff with this. We still have a few minutes. So I'm going to put up on the screen this session's doodle sheet. If you happen to have your doodle sheets, you can pull that out, or you can just look on the screen, whatever you like. So this is an illustration that's in the end notes. And this, this ties in with a lot of what we've been talking about today. And there's a few questions after it that we'll talk about. So, so what do you see in this image? Let's just describe what is this image?
Kind of an outline of faithful living.
Okay. So how many parts are there to faithful living according to this diagram?
3.
And are any of them more important than the other, or does it seem like they're all of equal importance?
You can't have one without the other.
Well, there's worship is at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like if there's a triangle or a pyramid, that whatever's at the top seems most important. They're all connected, but I
Yeah.
feel like the top is most important.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I think you could see it, either way, either that worship is more important or that they're of equal importance. But I see, since the boxes are all the same size, that even if worship is first, it's not hugely first, and then the others are small. I think it's like first among equals kind of thing. And what's at the very center of this?
Could it be also that if you don't have worship, you can't have righteousness or compassion?
Could be.
That is a very good point, because I've spoken to people who are not too sure about belief in God even, and they'll go to church, and they feel they're righteous and compassionate. And they don't need to go to church. They don't need to be using a reference of God necessarily, but they are very, so they, when you said that, Mary, people can say they're righteous and compassionate, and they don't need to have the worship
Right.
involved.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm not sure this tells us that you can't have one without the others, but it's saying that in God's notion of what community should be, all three must be there. Okay, so let's look at the questions here then. So the first question is, what happens to the others if one of these gets too much or too little focus on or energy? Like if you really focus on righteousness but not so much on worship or compassion, what happens to them?
Out of balance.
Okay. And what can that lead to?
Chaos.
It could. It could.
Self-righteousness.
Yeah,
Yeah, too much righteousness could lead to self-righteousness. What about too much?
Yes.
What could too much compassion lead to?
Being taken advantage of.
Hmm.
I don't know.
It could.
well, your focus moves off of God then, that it becomes about, just one, a lot of times just one concern or one organization, and all your time and energy goes into helping to do that, but you forget that why you're really doing that is because of God, what he's given to us.
I think another thing that can happen too, with if the focus is too much on compassion and not so much on the others, is it can really lead to compassion fatigue and burnout. That and that's something that people in helping industries and volunteers face a lot. And I think that's part of what worship and righteousness help you to do is keep that grounded, that I'm not going to be able to save everybody and fix everything, but I have a role to play here. And what about worship? Can you focus too much on worship and not enough on the other two?
I don't think so. No.
Yes,
I mean,
I
you
think
can
you
get
can.
into, what'd you say, Joe?
Yeah, I was going to say, yes, I think you can focus too much in worship. If a congregation says, well, the way you serve God is by coming to church on a Sunday morning. People used to say to me, everybody ought to be able to give God at least 1 hour a week. And I said, well, that misses the point. But anyhow, and we can also become so caught up in worship. Now, as a pastor, I was very concerned about doing worship rightly. But I also knew that if I took that too seriously, I could shortchange the other important aspects of Christian life.
Yeah.
It's not just about doing worship right, whatever that might mean. You can get very nitpicky about worship services.
Yeah.
So I think it can be overdone.
Okay. Next question. What are some ways to keep these in balance?
I think reflection, self-reflection, prayer can help you be more aware of what you're doing. As we were saying, Georgia was saying, you have to, when you're being compassionate, you have to remind yourself, why are you doing this? Is this important for that person? And is it important for me? What do you say, Lord? What should I do now? So it's a reflection for me. It's important because sometimes you can get carried away and want to help too much, and it's not necessarily what the person needs.
Okay.
I was thinking about the importance of community, and that when, you kind of lessen that importance of community when you do get focused on one area or the other, because then it becomes more individual. If you're thinking about, I have to worship this way and I have to do this, or I'm just focused on that, the whole element of community and relationship kind of gets off balance, and it becomes more of the individual.
Yeah.
And to kind of piggyback on that, one of the ways we keep these in balance is by making sure that all voices in the community get a chance to speak.
Mm.
To use example of worship, I mean, as a pastor, I was in charge of worship. I was responsible to make sure there's a worship service every week. But I had to make sure I was allowing other people who knew a lot more about compassion than me had a good say in what our community of faith would look like. Because they were much better running food pantries and doing social ministry than I ever was. So I needed to learn to let go of some things and make sure that the people who were really good at that were in charge of it, and not just those of us who were ordained leadership, So give all the voices of the community a chance to speak and to be able to act and lead in the community. That helps keep this in balance.
And the same with committees. I noticed that Mary offers people the opportunity to get with their gifts and talents to help her with her social ministry group, because it's very broad and she doesn't do it all. She doesn't take it all herself. She shares with other people to get this done.
Georgia, when you put together the narrative budget every year, what are the three categories in our congregation?
Worship, learning, and outreach.
Do you feel like this triad fits into that as well? Or do you think our three categories fit into this structure as well?
That's interesting. Now that you say that, I would look at worship, obviously there, and righteousness. I think that's learning, and compassion would be the outreach.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So I think our congregation, we're structured in such a way that we strive to find this balance. I mean, we probably don't always reach it, but that's in our structure, that we want to reach a balance like this. So that's a good thing.
It's in our logo.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's on our logo.
Okay, so the last question here. Which component needs more emphasis or understanding in your community or in your own life?
All of them.
Okay.
Like,
Yep.
and maybe not all at the same time. I feel like as you go through your life, things kind of move up and down in priority. And I think at any given time, you probably could try to increase your emphasis in one area or the other, or all three of them.
Like kind of almost like a pendulum. Like sometimes you're going one way and then you have to, before it gets too far, go back the other way.
Yeah.
I always think, Kim, of like priorities and demands, that usually that's when you get out of balance, or the pendulum starts going, when you let, the demands of what's happening in your life take over what, really is a priority. And sometimes they're very clouded.
Yeah, sometimes the urgent can take precedence over the important. I feel like in our congregation, I feel like the learning end, and I would think of it in the terms of learning, not, I think righteousness is a rough word for it, but I feel like that's the part that we might need a little more emphasis on. I feel like we're doing all three of these, but I feel like more people are involved in worship and in compassion than are involved in learning. I feel like this is a kind of our core group of learners here. And we're just, it's not as much of a focus for a lot of other people.
I wish we had more Bible studies, not necessarily led by you, Pastor, but by people like Karen or Janet. And we should have them like during the day. I think more people would come. A lot of people
Maybe.
don't want, like Vivian said, she would come if it was during the day, not at night. A lot of older people don't want to drive at night. But I think we have to be careful that we don't become a church of works and not words.
Mhm.
I think by having more Bible studies, that would help us.
Could be.
I think it would be interesting to do more Bible studies or things with other churches, like having done the VBS this summer with the Methodist Church. And I went to their their program this weekend. Forget what the name of it. One Starry Night. Like I feel like it would be interesting to do more learning with people from other churches, because I think I don't know, it's interesting to see what other people believe or how they go about doing stuff. Or sometimes I feel like I get stuck in like the way I do stuff or the way our church does stuff. And I think it would be interesting to share stuff with other churches.
Well,
Sure.
Kim, I go to a Bible study every Friday morning at Mount Bethel Brethren Church. And if you'd like to go with me, I'd be more than happy to take you with me.
Okay, that would be cool.
Yeah.
But like Karen, we used to have the Thursday morning coffee hour, and in the beginning, we really focused a lot more on studying a book in the Bible.
Mhm.
And that was good. I enjoyed that. Maybe one day we'll go back to it.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. The one last thing I wanted to throw out here is I was thinking about one thing we talked about last week was the threefold Sabbath, that the Sabbath is the seventh day of the week, the Sabbath year is the seventh year, and then the Jubilee year is the 50th year. And it occurred to me that that we're celebrating our Jubilee year next year. And what would it look like for us to celebrate it as a Jubilee?
We would give the land back to its original owner.
Well, that would be interesting. Yeah, we're going to
would
celebrate
be
our
interesting.
50th year by disposing of the church land. Pastor, find a new place to live.
No, but I think to live in the spirit of Jubilee means that the major focus of the anniversary should be centered on mercy and compassion. I mean, that's the spirit of the Jubilee was meant to encompass, to lift up the downtrodden and help the poor.
Any other ideas?
I mean, we do things as community together, and with Joe saying, what the real meaning of Jubilee was. I mean, is there a way to have an introspective part and then bring that back to community? Something that, a debt or, something that you're feeling, something that you want to do for someone else or something like that. I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say, but I'm just thinking about that whole release part, as every, the things that we do as community for outreach at Prince of Peace. And I'm sure there's other individual things that we do, individually, but would it be something that we could think about on our own
Yeah.
that would bring back to community, that would make it something whole that we could do together. I don't know.
I think
Just-
that's a very good concept to work on in terms of putting it into practice and making it active in a creative way. And I think celebrating about us and how wonderful we are is great, but celebrating to help others as we are celebrating how happy we are that we have survived the whole 50 years would be it's a good thought. You know, it's like there are so many ways, like everyone bring a slip of paper and add it to something and some big flower about what you might do for others. Some project, and I'm bringing this up, but I'm not going to be in charge of it.
Just in case.
Are there dates set for an anniversary celebration?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
When are they? What are the dates?
Well, there's multiple things throughout the year. There's
What's the year to begin with?
it's 2022. It's the calendar
Okay,
year.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And I mean, I could send you the list that we've been working on. I know that the big thing is there's a banquet in October. There's going to be in June, there's going to be a special service at a park
Jacktown.
somewhere. Jacktown.
Jacktown.
Okay. Jacktown. We're going to have worship there in the morning and then a, picnic atmosphere all day long. And several prior pastors are coming back throughout the year to preach. Those are kind of the big things.
Yeah, I'd love to know those dates. So I avoid Gabby's supply preaching assignments.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The picnic at Jacktown, is that just for our congregation or for the community?
For community.
Great.
Okay.
Some music and there'll be food trucks there too. So it's like a several hour type thing.
There may be some things embedded as this that you're talking about in these different events that would be giving back to the community or to celebrating the community and not just our community.
And maybe since one area you kind of picked out on Pastor learning, are there some different learning events or something that will take us from our past, our present, really learning more about how we're using, the Bible and everything that we do to keep us in our faith where we are to go and carry on to the future.
Yep.
Georgia, do you think it would be a good idea to have a basket of the prayer squares there? With
Sure.
like a 50th anniversary hang tag?
Yeah, that would be a great idea.
Okay.
And we could maybe do some encouragement cards as well for people to pick up things, there that day.
Brenda, is that something you would have to run by your committee?
I can bring it up. I can bring it
Okay.
up.
That would be great.
Yeah, let us know, because then I have to start making them.
Yeah.
All right. I know Kim needs to get going. So before we wrap up, I have a question. Do we want to meet next week? The
I'd rather
23rd.
not. I'd rather not. We'll meet next week.
And I will say that I'm on vacation the following 2 weeks. So we took a long hiatus before. We're going to take another 3-week hiatus. Then if we don't meet next week, it's going to be 3 weeks unless someone else wants to lead this.
How about Pastor Joe?
That's who, we're looking at you. So, so then the next time we'll gather will be, January 13th, I guess, or whatever the Thursday is near there.
Don't use my phone, my hearing aids are.
And I will send a new schedule around because we've gotten all kinds of mixed up here between skipping days and then taking this chapter as 2. So let's close with a prayer. I have a prayer from the Leader's Book here. I'll read. Right. Find it. Let us pray. Lover God, you are the giver of all good gifts. You bind yourself to us with promises and with visions that are deeper and wider than we can understand. You invite us into the partnership of your covenant, a gift that shows us how to live in ways that reflect and respond to your passion and care for all creation. Guide our steps in paths of righteousness and tune our hearts to mercy. May our worship ground us in the tangible truth of your steadfast love, and may our lives reveal your will for the world. We wait for the world you are making, even as we work to see it in our own times. We give thanks for your manna, and we ask for your mercy. Amen. All right, thank you
Have a
all
good
very
lunch.
much.
Tim.
Thank you. That was
Everyone.
wonderful.
Everyone.
Wonderful discussion.
Great. We'll
Yep,
see you
good
soon.
And happy
day.
birthday to Pastor Michael.
Thank
Oh.
you.
Happy
Yes,
birthday. How old? 39?
Sure,
44.
Like
sure.
that.
sure.
You got over the
44?
40 mark.
I'm well past the 40 mark.
I think you're 44.
You're getting closer.
45.
I
45?
I turn 46 tomorrow.
He's a
No,
young'un.
you
He's a
don't.
young'un.
It seems like yesterday you were 43.
Well, it was 3 years ago. With COVID, that probably was yesterday. So,
Yeah.
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 Have a good one.
All right,
Okay,
bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
See ya.
Have a good day.